Okay, so let's go in detail. So student, the knowledge of the earth, that is its interior, it's not through the excavation and the exploration, right? But it is by the study of the seismic waves or the material that is being, exploded out by by the time of the volcanic explosion and the various theories of the origin of the earth. Okay, so with that respect, the seismic waves that are also the earthquake waves. So only primary waves such as the P waves, they reaches the surface of the earth, and the S wave, that is the secondary waves, they do not pass through the liquids. Okay, so the scientific instrument so as to record the waves, that is the P waves and the S waves, they enable the scientist to know about the temperature, the interior of the earth, the pressure conditions prevailing, and the density, right? So as I told you that during the time of the volcanic eruption, the molten magma, okay, that escapes out from the magma chamber, that is inside out from the earth. So from the study of the magma, the scientists, they have come to know about the material, okay, that is the magma, and the various constituents of it, about the interior of the earth. Okay, so keeping in that all the theories of the origin of the earth, scientists study the meteoroids that falls on the surface of the earth. Okay, so the earth is said to be constituted of the same materials as the meteoroids, and the heat given out by the earth, that comes out in the form of the radioactive elements from the deep inside the earth. So the study of the heat of the interior, that enable us to estimate the temperature of the earth, okay, in the interior of the earth, right? So the earth structure, it is consisted of the several layers, right? So the outer one, it is the crust, okay, the lithosphere, and the part of the earth that are immersed underneath the ocean and the seas, they are the part of the hydrosphere. And if we extend upwards the earth, it is like, a blanket of the gases, that is the atmosphere. Okay, so now we will start with the chemical composition. So student, as we know that the lithosphere, it is the outermost crust of the earth, and it is the thinnest layer, and it is made up of rocks, of which the contents are silicates, feldspar, and mica. Okay, and the lithosphere, it is divided into two broad divisions. The first one is the shell, and second one is sima. Right. So what is shell? The shell, it appears to float above sima. Why? Because its density is less than sima. Okay, and the name of the shell, it has been taken from the silica and the aluminium, right? And sima is named after the silica and magnesium. Okay, so do remember these terms. Okay, students. So the shell, it forms, it is the shell layer forms the continent, and if we talk about the sima, it forms the floor of the oceans. Okay, and the core of the earth, that we called it as knife, so it is made up of the iron and the nickel. Okay, so the chemical formula for that, symbol for that is nickel is Ni, and for the iron is Fe. Okay, so that's how we termed it as knife. Okay, so these are the heavy metals that have the high density, and because of its high density, they are located or found out deep inside the earth. Okay, next comes the internal composition of the earth. So based on the chemical composition, the interior of the earth, it is bifurcated into three layers, that is crust, mantle, and core. Okay, so we will go one by one. First one is core. So student, what is core? It is the most inaccessible part, okay, because it lies in the center of the earth, okay, and because it is inaccessible part and lies in the center of the earth, by that only we can know that it is the most densest part of the earth, right? And it is also divided into the two parts, that is the inner and the outer. Okay, inner core and the outer core, and the entire core is about 7,000 kilometer if we talk about its diameter, and the temperature is very high, for about 4400 degrees centigrade to about 6000 degree centigrade, right? And it is generally believed that the core, it is made up of the iron and nickel, that is knife, okay, and that is responsible for the magnetism, okay, as we know that the magnetic field, it is oriented toward the south poles and the north poles, right? So it is responsible for that. And the solid state of the inner core, why it is solid, it is because of the high pressure and the high density. Okay, so due to the high pressure and the high density, it has compressed the rock material that was in the molten form. Okay, and the S waves, it disappear in the outer core, right? Because of this, so which means that it is in the molten state, right? Next is a mantle. So just below the crust lies the mantle, okay, and its thickness is about 2900 kilometer, okay, and its volume is 84% of the earth. And the mantle, it is being divided into two parts, likewise the core, okay, so the upper mantle and the lower mantle, right? So the upper mantle and the lower mantle, so the upper mantle, it extends from the Moho discontinuity, that is having the depth of 700 kilometer, okay, and it is cooler and it is made up of the rocks, right? So the lower mantle, it extends from about 700 kilometer to 2900 kilometer, and the lower mantle, it is hotter and it is denser as compared to the upper mantle. And if we talk about the depth of it, so the depth is about 100 to 410 kilometer, right students? And the mantle, it is in the molten state, okay, right? And we called it as asthenosphere. And the lower mantle is solid due to the higher pressure prevailing over that area. So the pressure in this particular area, it gets increases as and when we move towards the interior of the earth, okay, and density, it also increases, right students? So the temperature, here we can talk about the temperature, it's, it's about 1000 degrees Celsius to 3700 degree Celsius, right? Next is the Gutenberg discontinuity. So student, what is Gutenberg discontinuity? So the boundary in between the core and the mantle, okay, that is the it is the interface between the two. That is known as the Gutenberg discontinuity. Okay, so it begins at a depth of about 2800 kilometer, right? So here the changes are very abrupt, okay, all of a sudden, right? And this is dense due to the greater percentage of the iron, right? The percentage of iron, it is large, and that's what contribute to the more density, okay, of this particular place, area, sorry. Understood? Next is a lithosphere, or the crust. So student, the crust, that is a lithosphere, because it is a sphere of rock. Likewise, its name suggests litho means stones or the rocks. Okay, so crust, it is only about 1% of the earth mass, and on that all the life exists, right? And the crust is relatively, it is thinner, okay, it is a thin layer, and its thickness is about 60 kilometer, okay, below the high mountains, and 5 to 10 kilometer below the oceans, right? So if we talk about the other layers, it is a thin layer relatively compared to that, although all the other layer, it is thin layer. And the temperature of the upper part of the ocean current, it is estimated for about 0 degree centigrade, okay, and it gradually starts increasing as and when we move towards the interior of the earth, okay. And the weight and the pressure of the rocks, it also increases as and when we proceed towards the depth, right students? Last one is the Mohoverse's discontinuity. So what is Mohoverse's discontinuity? It is between the crust and the mantle. Okay. So it was being discovered by the Yugoslavian scientist, right? That was the Androreja Mohoversis. That is in the year 1909. Okay. So by his name, this was called his Moho discontinuity, right? So it forms the boundary between the crust and the mantle. Okay, it lies in between this is the between area of that, right? And like the crust, it does not exist in the uniform depth. For it is found about the 8 kilometer beneath the oceans, and if we talk about the continent, it is for about 32 kilometers. Okay, so it has the characteristics of the crust and the mantle. Okay, the upper layer that has the characteristics of the crust, and the bottom layer it has the characteristics of the mantle. Okay, so because of these continuous changes that takes place in the earth crust, okay, and due to the forces that exist within inside the thickness of the lithosphere, it is very fragile. Okay, as we talk about its composition. So the continental drift theory, it was being led forward by the Wagner, that was in the 20th century, and the theory of the plate tectonics that was put forward in 1960. So all these theories suggested that the earth crust, it goes structural changes. Okay, the structure of the earth, it gets changes, right? Like because like the lateral movements it gives the earth every time. So it is a slow gradual process. Okay, so this gives the new shape, uh, though it is very slowly. For about, it takes millions and millions of years. Okay, so this is all about the earth structure. So go through the chapter, right?